Hello and welcome to episode 2 of The Sales Circle, the sales podcast that is designed to help you improve and increase your sales. No matter what industry you're in, no matter what sector you're in, I hope that this podcast will bring you some great sales skills, sales knowledge, and sales help. And do you know what? Sometimes, actually, sales motivation, because I'm going to bet my bottom dollar right now that there is a good chance you're listening to this whilst in the car. Okay, you're commuting somewhere, you are off gallivanting, or perhaps you're going to a client meeting. And those times can be really, really draining. They can be nerve-wracking, anxiety-ridden. And sometimes you need someone sort of by your side to help motivate you and get you ready for that sales meeting. And one of my intentions with the Sales Circle is to keep you motivated, keep you pushing forward, and help you making more sales. My name is Rob Spence, an internationally renowned sales trainer, sales author, sales coach, and the managing director of a multi-award-winning sales and marketing agency called Paragon Sales Solutions. Nearly forgot the name there. And this is episode 2 of the Sales Circle, or episode 2 of season 1, I should explain. Now, before we go into the main bump of this podcast, I want to say a massive thank you. I unleashed this podcast only last week, or season 2 last week, and the response I've had since putting this podcast out has been absolutely incredible. So I want to thank you for tuning in, for listening, for taking part, for getting involved, and for joining us in the Sales Circle. Now, if you're new to this podcast, the reason I called it the Sales Circle originally, and I came up with this concept years ago, was no different to the Magic Circle, okay? That kind of exclusive club. An exclusive club where people come together, they join together, they share secrets, and they become part of the Sales Circle. And by listening to this, you are part of the Sales Circle. In today's episode, we're going to talk about relationship selling. We're going to talk about what it means. We're going to talk about why I like it. We're going to talk about why I wrote a book about relationship selling and why I think if we all become more relationship sellers, then the better landscape for sales will become. Now, as an add-on, just before we cut into the main episode, make sure you are following us on social media. There, I'll share plenty of snippets, lots of clips, lots of hints, tips, advice, everything else. Now, if you are a Facebook user, I've just set up a Facebook group called the Sales Circle Podcast. Now, once again, in there, I'm going to share exclusive content and hints and tips. If you want to join the Sales Circle, head on over to Facebook, find the group, click join, and I'm sure I'll accept you. So, shall we get on to relationship selling? When I first got into sales, like many people, I thought it was a cutthroat industry. And it is, and I'll explain what I'm talking about in a second. Sales always has this conception or perception, I should say, of being this cutthroat, sweaty, sleazy, at times, sort of do or die kind of activity. And sales is that, isn't it? We've got targets to meet, we've got commission checks to cash, we've got to make that sale, we've got to keep our prospects happy, even more importantly, we've got to keep our sales director happy, and everything else in between. Now, when I first fell into sales, I started to study sales. I read every book I could on sales. I watched every seminar, every webinar, listened to podcasts, everything I could. And the key thing that really kept cropping up was this term of relationships. Now, we'd all heard of the term of rapport, hadn't we? And we'd sort of looked at why it's important as salespeople to develop rapport. But relationships kind of go, in my opinion, went a bit deeper. Now, I read something by a fantastic author called, sales trainer and author, Jeffrey Gitomer. And I'm sure at one stage I will, as part of this, do a book recommendation for Jeffrey on one of his books. But I read a quote and it stuck with me ever since. He said, if you make a sale, you'll make a commission. But if you make a friend, you'll make a living. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. If you make a sale, you'll make a commission. But if you make a friend, you will make a living. Now, I don't care whatever it is that you sell. You may think that whatever you sell is a one sort of transaction kind of thing to sell. You know, you sell it once and you move on to the next one. But I, once again, bet my bottom dollar that no matter what it is, whether it's a product or a service, if you look at the relationship in hand and really maintain and look at that relationship, then lo and behold, the sale becomes easier. You're more likely to get recommendations. You're more likely to get referrals. You're more likely to get repeat business. And all in all, the whole transaction just becomes a lot more seamless. Now, I've kind of penciled and sort of scribbled some notes that I keep sort of on the floor down here. So what is my definition of relationship selling? Well, for me, it's about developing that relationship where we've got trust, so that the customer or the prospect is willing to buy from us, and willing to buy from us in a sort of stress-free and friction-free manner. It's very important during that relationship selling activity to remain communicative and communicate as well as possible. And that sometimes goes long after the sale is made. I want you to ask yourself this: how many times have you bought something, developed a relationship or some rapport with a salesperson that is selling to you, and then the second that sale's made, they vanish. They vanish into the abyss. Yes, there's a chance they may pass you on to another one of their colleagues or another department or whatever it is. But has that happened to you? And if it has, how annoying is it? It's not nice, right? You've developed this relationship with a great salesperson, someone that you can know, like, and trust, and boom, they vanish into the abyss. Of course, salespeople should have empathy, and empathy is a vital, vital thing within relationship selling. Empathy for me is understanding the feelings, the needs, the wants, the desires of whoever it is we're selling to. It's not just selling for selling's sake. It's not just sort of selling just to tick that box, to get that commission, to make the sales director happy, whatever it is. We are selling because we believe in the product and we believe that it's going to help the customer with their problems or solve their problems. And finally, all of this leads to that loyalty. Relationship selling is a fantastic way of really, really sort of keeping hold of that customer long term. So you sort of keeping that customer within you, whether that's a contract-based business, whether they come back to you time and time again, whether it's just to stop them buying from your competitor. But it also, as I said earlier, I kind of refer to these as the 3 R's of sales. And these are the most critical bit of selling. I think if you can nail these 3 elements, then you will be making an absolute killing for the rest of your life. And they're repeat business, as we said before. We want our customers to keep coming back to us. We don't want to just have our customer buy from us once and move on to our competitor. It's a waste of everyone's time and effort. And in fact, what are the statistics? It costs 5 to 10 times more to get a new customer than it does to retain a customer. We also get the other 2 things, recommendations and referrals. Now, many of you will be sitting there going, well, what's the difference? They're the same thing. I like to differentiate them, and here's why. For me, a referral is when you actively ask for the referral. That's me making a sale. I've delivered some great work to Sally, and I say, hey, Sally, listen, I know we've been working together for quite some time now. Everything seems embedded in and so on. Is there anyone in your network, anyone in your little black book that could actually benefit from this? That's when we ask for referrals. Now, once again, many salespeople don't do this, but if you do it, then you're opening up a checkbook for more sales. What's the worst thing that a prospect's going to say? No. Okay, move on to the next one. Recommendations, however, are the referrals that happen when you're not in the room. A recommendation is where, Sally and Bob are down the pub having a pina colada or whatever they'd rather. And they, Sally goes, oh, do you know what, Bob? I've been really stressing out recently. My accountant's been letting me down. I'm behind on tax and behind on VAT. I don't know what's going on with balance sheet, yada, yada, yada. Bob says, do you know what? You need to speak to Rob. Rob is a fantastic accountant. I'm not, by the way. Don't ever trust me for your accounts. You need to speak to Rob. He'll sort you out. He'll look after you. I tell you what, I'll introduce you to when I get back in the office tomorrow. That's why relationship selling is so important. Now, the benefits, as I said earlier, are just absolute mind-boggling. So how can we become good relationship sellers? If you are looking for further support to boost your sales skills, then check out our online sales training courses. They're available to take part in wherever in the world you are and at any time, with sales training on any sales skill. Head on over to the Paragon Sales Solutions website to find out more. So when it comes to relationship selling, for me, relationship selling, maybe I overlook this too much, and maybe I be too blasé and naive, but relationship selling is just about being a good human being and about being a good friend, a good person. So for me, the things I look out for is being a person of value, being the sort of the go-to person, the expert that person needs and wants. It's also about having to look down at my notes now. It's about actively listening. Now, once again, we've all sat in those sales meetings with those salespeople who listen, but they don't listen. They, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, listen, can we get that sale made? They listen for the sake of listening. Relationship selling is all about active listening. Now, once again, active listening is not just saying, yes, I understand. Let me repeat what you've just said. Let me nod my head a little bit more. Active listening is truly understanding the needs, the wants, the desires, and the targets, the pain points of the customer. It's about going that step deeper. And I think when it comes to active listening, it also goes beyond a business world. I love learning about my customers, not just the business side of them, but I love learning about their family, their friends, their drivers, their kind of key emotional triggers, what their dog's called, what their cat's called, I look where they've gone on holiday. I love all of that because then it allows me to have more fun when it comes to selling. And I think as well, it's relationship selling is less about the transaction and it's more about opening up that relationship. And one of the key ways to do that is to constantly follow up. And I know there's a lot of salespeople in the world that hate the term, and I think it's just because it's been overused, but good relationship sellers are those that check in. Now, once again, I'm not saying, and I think this is why people don't like the term check in. We're not just sending an email, hey, Tony, just checking in. Hey, Tony, I'm here to check in. None of that nonsense. When I'm talking about checking in, it is genuinely, hey, Tony, how are you? Listen, I saw your LinkedIn post last week. I'd love to learn more. Give us a call when you're free. It's about opening and having good, engaging conversations. So what are the downfalls of relationship selling? Well, some people would argue that relationship selling increases the sales cycle. Relationship selling could, in theory, make a transaction take longer. So if you've got a sales director or a managing director or a sales manager who wants quick and easy wins, relationship selling at times can be off-putting for them because they want those quick, easy wins. They want you to go in, they want you to hunt and gather, and they want you to get that sale back on their desk so they can tick that box, right? Sometimes relationship selling can take a bit longer, but that we can talk about that in a second. That's not always the case. Relationship selling, yes, naturally may incur more time because you're developing a relationship, understanding the needs, wants, desires of your prospect. But it doesn't mean that every sale is going to take 6 months. It doesn't mean that it's going to take 12 months. It just means that you've got to nurture and understand the needs and wants and desires more. My argument to that is actually, if you plant the seeds and really nurture that plant will keep you coming back for more. You know, if you were to plant an apple seed and the second the apple got mature enough, quickly started taking all the apples and not fed it, you didn't water it, you didn't nurture it, you didn't sing to it, that apple tree will only give you one harvest. But if you look after that tree, if you feed it, if you water it, if you nurture it, if you do sing to it perhaps, then lo and behold, you're gonna get more time. Now, I think over the time, many sort of consumers have cottoned on to this kind of, this salesperson's trying to make friends with me just to make a sale. And that then, to some degree, raises the barrier a little bit more. It sort of makes them a bit more wary, a bit more standoffish, kind of keeps people at arm's length. And that's where the genuine side of relationship selling really comes into its own. Yeah, of course, if you're just there to make a friend, just to make a sale, your consumer, your prospect, your customer is going to cotton on to that very quick, and their barriers are going to raise really, really quickly. But if you are a genuine person, if you are a genuine person of value, someone that really over-delivers, that really values that friendship, that will get picked up on. And it's those that where we see the most repeat business, the longer-term customer satisfaction, a lack of buyer's remorse, more recommendations, referrals. And that, to me, is why relationship selling is so, so important. Now, when it comes to relationship selling, I could talk for hours about it. And normally I put my book recommendations at the end of these podcasts. But this time around, I am going to introduce my book recommendation right now. And the reason for that is because selfishly, my book recommendation this week goes to my first ever book that I wrote, Relationship Selling. Now, I say it's my first ever book because there's been another 2 books since, and I've got plans to write another 2 or 3 over the next couple of years. I've got some ideas. Now, one of the things that I will be looking to do is rewriting relationship selling and kind of bringing it back into the modern day world. Now, just to point out, the book isn't that old. I wrote this and it got published in 2017. Now, this was a culmination of all of the research, all of the dedication, all of the understanding I had put into sales and relationship selling. And I think, being in 2017, at the time of recording this, it's 2024. So, goodness, it's 7 years old. It's going to be 8 years old next year, and I think there's a lot has changed in business world, especially with the introduction of AI, automation, and everything else in between. But this is a great book. It's available on Amazon. And this was actually the kind of catalyst to really propel my sales career and my business as Paragon Sales Solutions and my sales training and my sales coaching. It went on to, it still sells, copies to this day. It's sold, hundreds and thousands of copies across the world. I have people reading it all over the globe. I'll quickly read through the blurb. So it says, we are all salespeople, which I do think we are. No matter what line of work you're in, you are a salesperson. Every single day, you'll need to sell yourself. Whether you're going for a job interview, asking for a pay rise from your boss, or even going on a romantic date, you have to persuade others to give you what you truly deserve. Relationship selling is a straight talking guide on how to become a better you, how to increase your sales, how to build and develop strong business and personal relationships, and how to get more from each day. So relationship selling dives headfirst into the most profitable sales techniques used by millions of sales professionals around the globe, allowing you the chance to learn what it takes to increase your commission check month after month. And we talk this book, I'll be honest, it's not the longest book in the world. At the time of writing, it was like the longest thing I've ever written. But it's about 109 pages long. I was going to say words long. It's definitely longer than that. It talks about everything from goal setting. I'll tell you what, let's go to the chapters about knowing your trade, the art of relationship selling, the tennis ball theory. Now, that's a theory that I penned, and I actually really like the tennis ball theory. Maybe we need to talk more about the tennis ball theory and why, actually. And one of the most important bits, let me just try and find an element here. One of the most important parts of this book is, let me just find it. Where's it gone? Oh my goodness, I thought I had it then. There we go. I had actually opened up the page already. What a muppet. You made the sale, don't just quit yet. And this talks about long-term customer satisfaction, loyalty, customer service, and everything else in between. And actually, there's a nice little quote on this page from Brian Tracy, a living legend of sales training and sales coaching, where he says, in the sales profession, the real work begins after the sale is made, which I'm a big fan of. So that's this week's sales book recommendation. I do urge you to go pick up a copy. You can find it on Amazon. It's available on Kindle and paperback. I'd love for you to read it, and I'd love to know your thoughts. So now we move on to probably my favourite part of the podcast, which is the Q&A section, the question and answers. One of my main motivations for this podcast is to improve the standard of sales across the world. I want to improve salespeople and to help salespeople. But I also want to help you, the person that is listening. I want to motivate you. I want to give you some skills, tips, tricks, and everything else in between. So if you do have a question, maybe you're struggling with a sale, maybe you've faced an objection and you don't know how to handle it, maybe you are under pressure from your sales director for not performing, no matter what your sales-based relation question is, I don't know if I said that correct, I'd love to hear from you. And there's a number of ways you can get in contact with me. You can follow me on social media and send me a direct message. If you search for the Sales Circle on pretty much any platform, you will find us. You can email thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com. That's thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com. Or connect with me on LinkedIn if you just search for Rob Spence. I'd love to know your questions. Now, thank you so much for those that emailed in last week, or after last week, I should say. I've picked out 3 questions. Now, if I've not answered your question, it doesn't mean that I've neglected it. I'm trying to limit these to 3 per week. So just stay patient, stay listening, and I'll try and answer it. Now, this first question actually is a bit of a sneaky, cheeky one, because this is a question that I was asked on another podcast. This was a question directly asked to me by another podcast host. We were talking about relationship selling, and we were talking about the methodology and the ideology around relationship selling. And he said, look, Rob, that's all well and good, but it's a bit fluffy. What if a business wants quick wins? Now, I kind of answered this question during my synopsis of relationship selling. I don't believe that relationship selling, to a degree, takes longer than any transactional kind of sale. Naturally, it may do. Naturally, there may be an incurrence of additional time because you're not rushing, you're not closing for the sake of closing. So there will still be quick wins. Now, once again, the beauty of relationship selling isn't to get a quick win. It's not to get a quick sale. It's not to get a quick commission. It's not to hit that tick box for the shareholders, the stakeholders, and everyone else. It's about developing relationships so you get repeat business, referrals, recommendations, and happier customers. Quick wins will still occur. And it's down to the salesperson to understand when to take that friendship or relationship to the next level. It's not about being, wishy-washy and going, look, I've made a friend now, I don't have to make a sale. When that person is ready, they will ask me. A good salesperson will still try and close that sale, but they'll wait for the right time. They'll look out for buying signals. They'll look out for times when that relationship is ready to go to the next phase. Now, this sounds really cheesy and I sound like that guy from Fast Guy whenever I say this. It's like whenever we're dating, someone, we always know when it's time to make that first kiss, or sometimes when to ask them for the first date, or maybe a step further. I do sound like, what's his name? Swiss Tony, wasn't it? Swiss Tony. I love Swiss Tony. I do sound a bit like him right now, but we know and we recognize when it's time to take those to the next stage. And it's the same with the good relationship sellers. They're not just there to make friends. They know when to take things to the next level as well. The next question was sent in. So thank you for this question. What are the best ways to learn to sell? Now, I think my biggest qualm with salespeople is that we're never really taught how to sell. We'll become a salesperson, we'll get into a sales role. Sometimes we'll get a bit of training from a sales manager, a sales director, if we're lucky. Sometimes it'll be from our colleague or whatever. And then we're kind of left to our own devices. Now, I think we all learn in our own ways. We all sort of pick up knowledge in our own manners. And I can only share with you what's really worked for me. I worked in a company where, once again, there was no sales training. It was just know the product or products, listen to what your colleagues and the bosses are saying, and hope for the best. And just take some kind of on-the-job coaching. And when I say on-the-job coaching, it was put the phone down. Hey, Rob, you should have said this instead of this. That was the kind of coaching we had. So I self-invested. Now, that started with just one book. And I tell you what, actually, I'm gonna keep quiet as to what that book is until next week's episode. I'm not going to tell you what that book is. I think it's vital that we share that next week. But I bought one book. Now, full transparency, at the time, I was not cash rich. I didn't have that much disposable income. And so I self-invested, bought it secondhand. eBay is a great source for secondhand sales books. And from there, it just started. I read a sales book every week. I didn't necessarily listen to podcasts straight away, but I watched videos, I listened to seminars, I attended webinars. And I think the key thing that I always did was I position myself with mentors. I recognize sales professionals, great sales professionals, both within my company and outside of the company, and I questioned them. I asked them, I watched them, I monitored them, and understood what I could do. So if you are looking for ways to sell, look, this podcast is a great start. The fact that you are listening to this proves that you're trying to improve your sales skills, and that's a fantastic thing to do. Now, the final question, I'm just going to check the timer because I don't want to kind of overrun on this. How can I make my cold calls more effective? Now, that's a very open question and something I could talk about for hours. Now, for those of you that don't know, I own a cold calling agency. I own an agency that makes cold calls every single day. We make hundreds, if not thousands of cold calls every single day. So this is right up my street, and I'd love to spend hours on this. For me, I think the two biggest tips I'll tell you about cold calling, okay? 3 biggest tips. A cold call is only a cold call when you don't know what it is you're talking about or you don't know about your prospect. So do a bit of research first. You can use LinkedIn, Twitter, or X, Facebook to understand your prospect, understand their needs, their wants, and desires. It makes it a little bit less cold. Secondly, just remember that the real world isn't the Wolf of Wall Street, okay? There's many of us going, I wish it was, for various reasons, but life isn't the Wolf of Wall Street. Cold calling isn't going to get you a quick win. It's not a case of trying to make a sale on that first call. It's about opening that relationship, opening that communication channel to then take things to the next stage. And the final tip is have fun. So many people get really tense. They kind of get really skewed up like this. I'm about to make some cold calls. Oh my God. And they start stressing. Anxiety takes over them. They start to panic. They start to doubt themselves. Imposter syndrome starts to kick in. They panic. They worry. X, Y, Z. Have fun with it. Just mix things up. Have fun with it. You could make 100 calls in a day. Try something different in each call. Have some fun. Make the prospect laugh. Make yourself laugh. Tell a joke. You know, you're not going to win over every single person. If we look at different buyer types, different people will react to different ways of communicating. So the way that you communicate with persons 1 to 20 will be different to 21 to 40. Mix it up. See what works. Have some fun with it. Maybe at some stage we'll do a whole podcast episode on cold calling. If you do want to hear about that, if you think that would be a great episode, just drop a comment on either this episode or on any of the social media. Once again, thanks so much for the questions. Would love to answer more. Send them in to thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com or send me a message on any of our social media platforms. And I guess that's a wrap for this week's episode. As I said in episode 1, I'm going to try and keep these as short as possible. I want you to be able to listen to this on your commute on the way in. So I think half an hour is a key step, is a key mark. I'm always receptive to your feedback in terms of what you want to listen to, what you want to see. So please do, once again, message in. You know where to find us. We'd love to hear about what you want to hear. If you've got any questions, if you've got any book recommendations, even if you want to become a guest, although this isn't going to necessarily be an interview-led podcast, I still want great salespeople to come and talk about their journey and to ask questions. So whether you're an MD, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a salesperson, a sales director, or a customer service person, maybe if you're a buyer, come in. I'd love to ask some questions and would love to get you on the podcast. Now, as a reminder, these podcasts are released every Thursday across Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And the video comes out every Thursday as well on YouTube. So please, whatever it is you are doing right now, just take a second, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. The more support we get, the better value content I can deliver. I can't even talk. I can deliver for you. So please do. Thank you so much for listening to the Sales Circle. Just do me another favor. Just share this with at least one colleague. Help me to help improve the sales skills, the tactics, mentality of sales professionals around the world. Thank you so much for listening. My name has been Rob Spence, and it still is Rob Spence. Until next time, all the best. And that's it for another episode of the Sales Circle. Make sure you hit that follow button, join us over on social media, and we'll see you next week.